You can start.
Thanks, Sachin, for inviting me today. And thanks, Dr. Parekh, for being a part of my session. I'll be speaking on current status of novel agents in hormone refractory prostate cancer, that is metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer. We know that CRPC, can you go to the next slide? So basically, CRPC is defined as a state in which you have already treated the patient with androgen deprivation therapy, but still they are rising PSA and there is radiological progression. There are various definitions of defining as castrate-resistant state, whether the serum testosterone until now was defined as 50 nanogram per DL, but recent guidelines have changed the testosterone value to about 30. So less than 30 testosterone value, but still progression documented is called as CRPC. And overall, we know that prostate is the most common cancer in men. 5-year survival is in the tune of 98.2%. But when we have metastasis and when there's a hormone-resistant state, a 5-year overall survival of 30% is documented. Now, this metastatic hormone-resistant prostate cancer eventually transitions into CRPC with a median duration of 3 years. And most of the survival of a prostate cancer metastatic state is in the CRPC state. That is 3/4 of the overall survival is in the CRPC state. And there's an entire change of natural history and newer drugs have a remarkable role. Next slide, please. We have had a 6-year hiatus, but from 2013, we have had whole spectrum of newer drugs, including immuno-oncology, we have biologics and combination drugs. Next slide. So these are the class of drugs which I just spoke about. We have Sipuleucel T, which is actually a patent dendritic cell vaccine not available in our country. We have pembrolizumab with emerging options. They are targeted hormonal therapy, which has been there for the past 4 years, which is abiraterone and enzalutamide. I'll just focus on some molecular expression, which makes targeted hormones work better. Then, of course, targeted drugs like PARP inhibitors and DNA damaging agents like radium-223. Next slide, please. So how do we sequence these drugs? We find out whether the patient is symptomatic or asymptomatic, whether the patient has visceral disease or non-visceral metastasis, or whether it is pre or post docetaxel, or whether high tumor burden or there is low tumor burden. I'll be talking about certain biologic markers and their emerging role. We already have the role of MSI. There is some debate about PD-L1 and its expression. There's a lot of talk about ARV7 splicing agent. Then, of course, there's DNA repair agent and exploratory biomarkers. And we move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So these are the common genomic alterations in CRPC state. Almost 50% will have ACT gene fusion. There will be AR gene point mutation or amplification seen in another 50%. TP53 mutation or deletion is seen in 40 to 50%. P10 deletion is seen in 40 to 50%. RB1 deletion is seen in 20%. And then DNA repair gene, which we have a highlight on, is only in about 10 to 20%. Next slide, please. And we'll move to the next slide. So first, let me start with immunotherapy. Next slide, please. So we already know the mechanism of immune checkpoint inhibitor, especially in reference to prostate cancer. The cancer cells develop with many mutations as they progress, and that makes them appear foreign to the immune system. These T cells recognize and attack and kill foreign cells, and PD-L1 plays an important role in dampening the anti-tumor immune responses. Next slide. PD-L1 expression has been studied in various sites. Basically, in 2016, there was this large publication in which hormone-sensitive radical prostatectomy specimens were evaluated, and they found that these prostate specimens had almost 50% expression of PD-L1. So moderate and high level of PD-L1 was found in 52.2% of all these cases. And patients progressing on enzalutamide had significantly higher level of PD-L1, even more than 50%, in the dendritic cells in blood, which were extracted from such patients. Next slide, please. With this background, in 2015, an early immuno-oncology study was published with nivolumab. Only 17 patients were put in this study, and all of them were given the standard dose of nivolumab. And surprisingly, none of them showed objective responses. 2 of those patients actually had high expression of PD-L1, even those patients did not show any responses to nivolumab. Next slide. What about MSI? Well, MSI is a condition of genetic hypermutility. We already know about predisposition to mutations in the patients who have impaired DNA mismatch repair, that is MMR. MMR correlates with errors in DNA replication. The aberrant process leads to DNA fragmentation of MSI structure consisting of repeat nucleotide. This repeat nucleotide is most commonly seen as GT and CA repeats. Next slide, please. This was another study published in 2019 in JAMA, in which 1,033 patients were evaluated, and it was found that all these patients had good adequate tumor sample, and MSI sensor by Bethesda classification showed 3.1% had high expression of MSI. That is, they were deficient in MMR in all these patients. Now, out of the 2 patients who had high expression of MMI, 23 had tumor with high MSI, with 9 patients having indeterminate score. And 21% of the 33 patients, that is 7 out of 32 patients, had pathogenic germline mutations, which supported Lynch syndrome. All others were non-Lynch syndrome associated deficient MMR. Next slide. Another biomarker which we have found to have association with immunotherapy is CDK12 mutation. A biallelic CD12 mutation has again found to lead to genomic instability, leads to gene fusions and immune cell infiltration into tumor cells. Next slide. Activity of anti-PD-L1 immune checkpoint inhibitors in CDK12 mutants have been found to be reasonable and quite good. CDK12 mutations occur in 5 to 7% of all patients of metastatic CRPC. This is known to be the aggressive variant and generally has younger presentation with higher Gleason score. They also have de novo M1 presentation. So they upfront present with metastatic disease. They also have been found to respond favorably to PD-L1 inhibitors, implicating that CDK12 deficiency can also be a response indicator for immunotherapy. I'll start with Keynote 199 study. This was a study with pembrolizumab in metastatic CRPC. The background of the study was that pembrolizumab as a monotherapy had shown durable responses in CRPC. This study was a phase 2 study in which patients were already treated with enzalutamide and had progressed. So subsequently pembrolizumab was added and they found good responses. Now this was a multi-cohort study with about 5 cohorts. Next slide. The first 3 cohorts, that is cohort 1, 2 and 3, the first cohort was the patients who had high PD-L1 expression. The second cohort was a patient with no PD-L1 expression, that is PD-L1 was 0%. And the third cohort was the same with any PD-L1 status, but who had non-measurable disease. So the first 2 had measurable disease as per RECIST 1.1 criteria, and the third cohort was non-measurable disease as assessed by PCWG 3 criteria. Next slide, please. Both the cohort 1 and 2 had responses, but the interesting part was both the cohorts had similar responses. So the response was irrespective of the PD-L1 status. Whether the PD-L1 expression was high or low, they had similar responses. Next slide. They were also analyzed as per the somatic DNA aberration. And again, the interesting point was that whether they were BRCA expressed or DDR1 gene expressed or negative, all the cohorts had expressed good response. Next slide. The cohort 4 and 5 were the patients who were actually progressed on enzalutamide, who initially had response to enzalutamide, but they were practically all patients were chemotherapy naive, but could have received abiraterone at any point in time. So the cohort 4 was again criteria assessed by RECIST criteria, and cohort 5 was bone-only disease who did not meet the RECIST criteria, and so they were assessed by PCWG 3 criteria. All these patients were given up to 35 cycles of pembrolizumab while enzalutamide was continued. Next slide. They were matched as per baseline characteristic. All patients had almost similar Gleason score, similar PSA values at presentation. They were matched as per the visceral presentation, whether they had liver mets or not, or whether they had less than 6 months or more than 6 months of enzalutamide response. Next slide. Both of these cohorts had achieved good overall response rate. In cohort 4, which was measured by RECIST criteria, there was about 12% of overall response rate and 51% of disease control rate. The duration of response was about 6.3 months. The cohort 5 again had 51% as disease control rate. So both of the cohorts showed good response when pembrolizumab was added on with baseline enzalutamide. So this basically shows that pembrolizumab enzalutamide was superior. Further to this, there's a Keynote 641 trial which has been assessing a combination of pembro plus enza and placebo plus enza in 1:1 randomization. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next is a combination of VEGFR with immune oncology drug. Cabozantinib, as we all know, is a multi-targeted inhibitor which targets angiogenesis, targets tumor growth, and immunomodulation. At this juncture, it is approved by FDA for RCC and unresectable HCC. There has been studies that combination with immune checkpoint inhibitors augments its action. Atezolizumab is an anti-PD-L1 inhibitor, and we have approvals in urothelial cancer, lung cancer, and triple-negative breast cancer. There is limited data which shows cabozantinib and atezolizumab individually have shown responses in metastatic CRPC. So basically, this trial was a combination of the both drugs. Please move to the next slide. In which 1:1 randomization was chosen. This was a phase 1, phase 2 open-label single-arm study. The data cutoff was 2019 December, and the final results are still awaited. But all the patients were metastatic CRPC with radiological progression in soft tissue, following treatment with either enzalutamide and abiraterone. None of these patients had received chemotherapy, and of course, none of them had received any immuno-oncology product or cabozantinib. Next slide, please. All of these patients had higher Gleason score. Most of these patients had more than 7 as the Gleason score, and all the subset of patients showed at least some response. There was OR. The median follow-up was around 12.6 months. The overall response rate was about 32%. And most of the patients who also had high-risk subset, that is the patients who had visceral disease and extrapelvic lymph node metastasis, also had similar response. That's in the tune of 33%. Next slide. There was no observed association of anti-tumor activity and PD-L1 expression in this analysis. So again,
Dr. Nitik, make it quick.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide? So we know that the toxicity in this was not additive. They suited the individual drug. Next slide. Overall response rate, as I said, was 32%, and it was irrespective whether it was a high risk or a low risk case. That is, it matched the clinical outcomes in both the risk category, and the treatment-related adverse event were in the tune of 60%. Next slide. A dendritic cell vaccine, which is patented in the name of Provenge, in which leukapheresis is done 3 days prior to giving the dendritic cell vaccine. Next slide. It's normally, again, it has important role in asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic metastatic CRPCs. Most of the patients have good life expectancy at presentation. They don't have any liver metastasis, the good ECOG performance status. This is excluded in patients with small cell or neuroendocrine prostate cancer. The phase 3 data shows that the survival outcome was in the tune of 21.7 months. Next slide, please. Next, please. Now, quickly about abiraterone and enzalutamide. Next slide. Next slide, please. So we know that there has been clinical evidence of cross-resistance by use of abiraterone followed by enzalutamide or enzalutamide followed by abiraterone, and this resistance lead to poor outcome. Next slide. And of course, if the patient, next slide. We have had good data recently which says an androgen receptor splice variant, that is ARV7, is a truncated form of AR that lacks ligand binding domain. Now, when this is expressed, next slide, there is good data to suggest that these patients who have ARV7 at presentation have initially poor outcomes if they are treated with hormonal agents, that is targeted hormones. Both the first Kaplan-Meier and the second Kaplan-Meier shows that if ARV7 was high, they had poor response to abiraterone in terms of PSA, and they had poor response in terms of enzalutamide in terms of PFS and OS. Next slide. But the curves were closer when we talk about taxane therapy. So patients who had high expression of ARV7 had somewhat higher response when were treated to taxane therapy first. Next slide, please. This led to decide that AR7 can be a good treatment-related marker. It could be a predictive marker for assessing response, and therefore Prophecy trial was started, which was a multi-centric, multi-continent trial which was a validation study for ARV7. We'll go to the next slide, please. And in which there were patients were subclassified based on circulating cell as assessed by Johns Hopkins University criteria, which assess cells based on the mRNA assay or the EpiScience San Diego protein assay. Both of these showed that if the ARV7 status was high, they had poor response to hormones and good response to taxane. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is a validated marker. However, a lot of controversy around it. And we have further data awaited on it. Radium-223 is a targeted bone metastatic theranostics product. Next slide. Eplimca is the phase 3 study design in which patients were stratified based on the alkaline phosphatase at presentation, whether they had already received bisphosphonates or not, or whether they had prior docetaxel at presentation or not. There was a 1:1 randomization for radium therapy versus best supportive care. Next slide. And this trial, of course, supported the use of radium-223, which happens to be category 1 indication in NCCN in 2020. Next slide. Next slide, please. Lot of trials are currently going on, which are phase 3 trials in which radium as a single agent or radium in combination with enzalutamide, abiraterone, cilta-cel has been tried, and the results of these are awaited. Next slide, please. Other targeted agents, PARP inhibitors, we have heard a lot about this today. Let me just summarize quickly that 1 in 10 metastatic prostate cancer will have germline DNA repair mutations. 11.8% in the study of 692 individuals were found to have a germline DNA repair. And when you have a germline DNA repair mutations, the most common in prostate cancer is BRCA2. The second most common is ATM mutation. And the third most common is CHEK2 mutation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this was TOPAP study, was the study of olaparib in prostate cancer. TOPAP A was a single-arm study which had only 49 patients, and they showed almost 32.7% response in unselected patient population. Next slide. TOPAP B was a trial of olaparib when DDR mutations were established. And this had substantially better results, and it showed that patients who had DDR mutation actually had about 54.3% response rates. Next slide. Triton-2 study was again a phase 2 multicentric study with rucaparib in 600 twice a day dosage. In this, patients had established DDR gene mutation. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. So these are the sum of PARP inhibitors in combination. Most of the trials are with single agent PARP inhibitors, and some of the trials are PARP inhibitors in combination with immuno-oncology, including pembrolizumab. There's a combination of atezolizumab seen. Then there are PARP inhibitor in combination with taxane agent, and most of these trials have results which are currently awaited. Next slide, please. The last is the combination of pembro plus olaparib. This was cohort 365, keynote 365 study, which had cohort A, which had patients with pembro plus olaparib in docetaxel pre-treated CRPC. Next slide.
And Dr. Neeti just concluded now. Actually, Dr. Parikh has to deliver his take-home message after the
Next slide, please. So the conclusion is we have emerging a new biomarker. ARV7 seems to be a promising marker. We have CDK mutation, which could be a response evaluation marker for immunotherapy. PARP inhibition again has promising therapeutic targets in patients with BRCA1 and BRCA2. And all patients of MRCIC require MSI at baseline. And now there are guidelines to do CDK12 and ARV7 at baseline. Thanks so much.